Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video. After last night's loss to the Phoenix Suns, combined with the Spurs' victory over the Denver Nuggets, the Lakers season, it's finally over. We don't have to talk about it anymore. This is going to be my last video for a while about the Los Angeles Lakers. Fingers crossed, I'm hoping so because I'm so over talking about them. A season that was supposed to be one where Russell Westbrook potentially finally won his ring. The Lakers bounced back from last year's injury-plagued year, going back to their championship form that we saw in the bubble. It was supposed to be a big triumphant return of the Lakers, of Russell Westbrook, a new era in LA for pretty much everyone involved. Maybe AD would finally take that MVP leap, and none of that happened. It was a year where things started off rough from the get-go, 0-6 in the preseason or something like that, where no one really thought it was a problem, but, you know, kind of weird. And then AD and Dwight Howard were fighting like the second game of the season, and then they just continued to lose. Guys got hurt. They lost some more. It was quickly evident that this team was not nearly as good as it was supposed to be. LeBron James tweet out like, keep that same energy, and people did, and the Lakers did not get better. Frank Vogel at one point was coaching for his job like day to day, and now we've reached the point where it went from like, oh, they're going to be a lower seed to, oh, they're going to be in the play-in tournament, to they're not even going to be in the play-in tournament because they physically can't make it at this point. I don't think we see LeBron James again this season, maybe for a game or two, to try and go for the scoring title. I wouldn't be surprised if him, AD, and Russ all get shut down. It was a weird one for the Lakers. I'm sure Lakers fans are glad that this nightmare season is over, and now kind of looking forward to the future. The Lakers are in a weird spot. I just kind of wanted to go over what went wrong from this season, what I saw in them initially, because I had them winning the championship, which, looking back, not the best call of mine. But I kind of just want to talk about what went wrong with them, what they kind of have to do as they move forward, what some of their potential options are, because there aren't many, to be honest. They're kind of locked into this team, which I don't think many Lakers fans kind of realize how locked in they are to the team that they have. So let's go through it. Starting off with kind of what went wrong. In the offseason, I thought they made good moves. I liked the Russell Westbrook addition. I thought him and AD specifically could be a really good tandem. I made a video over the course of the offseason talking about how I thought Anthony Davis could win MVP this season, how this could be his big breakout year to take over and become the guy on the Lakers. Like, he was supposed to, really last season was supposed to be the year where he kind of took over and became the guy from LeBron James, but it didn't really happen. Coming out of the bubble, I think there was an ESPN article ranking him as the second best player in the league. A lot of people thought it was going to finally be the time where he took the reins of the franchise and LeBron took a step back. It didn't happen, with him being pretty hurt over the course of the season, as he has kind of dealt with those injury issues over the course of his career. So that didn't really happen. Coming into this year, I thought maybe with Russell Westbrook having that point guard, that athletic, dynamic point guard that he could run pick and rolls with, I thought they would be really effective. I thought AD maybe could finally stay healthy, with Russell Westbrook taking a little bit of that load off of him, of course, along with LeBron James. It didn't happen. AD did not have that year, and Russ did not really have the effect I thought he would. He and LeBron James really didn't mix, which it was always going to be a weird fit between the two of them, but I thought with the talent that they had, they could really figure it out, especially because in the offseason, they added some decent shooters. Wayne Ellington, Kent Bazemore, Malik Monk, amongst others. Kendrick Nunn as a backup point guard. They have Melo. Trevor Ariza came in, who I honestly didn't expect to ever be that big of a player because he's really old at this point, which the oldness quickly became an issue for this team. The problem was everyone that could shoot threes couldn't play defense, and even then they weren't shooting threes that well. So a lot of them, including Wayne Ellington and Kent Bazemore, got benched over the course of the season. AD really wasn't playing that center role. In fact, LeBron James probably played more center this season than Anthony Davis, and it didn't work that bad, but for a guy who was supposed to take the reins of the franchise, he was supposed to be able to play the center more, which would really open the game up more for Russell Westbrook, and it never really happened, causing them to have to play either LeBron at center or more traditional centers, so that didn't really work out. Kendrick Nunn, who was supposed to be a solid backup point guard for them, never played. He missed like this whole season, and now he's taking his player option, so hopefully he can come back for them next season and actually get a chance to play and impact this team. It just didn't go well. And a lot of it kind of goes back to the Russell Westbrook trade. As a self-proclaimed Russell Westbrook is my favorite player in the history of basketball, I thought it was going to work better, and it just really did not. It looks like that probably the right move was to go and get Buddy Hield, which was looking like it was going to be the initial trade that they were going to make, sending Kuzma to Sacramento, along with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, for Buddy Hield, who probably would have been really good in this Lakers system as a great three-point shooter, which they desperately lacked and needed this season. Instead, they went out and got Russell Westbrook, which Magic Johnson alluded to maybe cost them a chance at DeMar DeRozan. I don't know how much DeRozan really would have risen this team's level. I think part of the reason why DeMar DeRozan was so good on Chicago was the talent that he had beside him, having guys like Lonzo Ball, Nikola Vucevic, Zach LaVine to space the floor. And in LA, I'm not quite sure how that would have worked. So I'm not a huge, I'm not saying that they really screwed themselves by giving up the chance at DeRozan, but maybe Buddy Hield also would have been a good addition, especially if they could have gotten the two of them, DeRozan and Hield. That team probably is a little bit. Beyond the whole roster construction issues, of course, there was the coaching issues. Frank Vogel really never figured out how quite to optimize the talent on the roster, how Russell Westbrook and LeBron James should work together, how to get them to really buy in defensively. It felt like kind of from the get-go after the first 20 or so games, everyone kind of just gave up on Frank Vogel as the coach. He's not going to be back next season. I don't think that's news to anyone. Going forward, in terms of coaches they should hire, there's rumors that Quinn Snyder could be a candidate, and I like him a lot for this team. I think he could really get a lot of buy-in. A name that I do not like that is on the rumor mill is Doc Rivers. If the Sixers get rid of Doc Rivers, the Lakers should stay very far away, because it would be kind of the same issues where Doc Rivers has problems holding leads, getting the guys to kind of play the way that he wants them to. I just don't think Doc Rivers is the answer at all for this Lakers team. I think Quinn Snyder makes a lot of sense. I think any number of other names make sense too. The Lakers should not go out and kind of just get the same name that has kind of been around the league the past few times. In Doc Rivers, they should go out and get either a new name or something that has a little more established kind of success as of recently. In a guy like Quinn Snyder, I think he makes a lot more sense. In terms of their personnel going forward, one of the big issues, as I mentioned, was their age. There's really no way to help that necessarily. I don't think many teams are rushing to get rid of their young players for the old guys that the Lakers have on this roster. The Lakers also just don't have picks. Their first round pick this year, which is something I forgot to mention in my last video talking about the Lakers, they don't even have their lottery pick this year. That goes to the Pelicans for the Anthony Davis trade. So they're not even going to get like a lottery talent out of this season. So it was kind of just a wash. They will have Kendrick Nunn coming back, who is a bit younger. Malik Monk, maybe he'll return, but I wouldn't be surprised if he chases a little bit more money somewhere else, seeing as how he was on a minimum contract this season. Taylor Horton Tucker, who was supposed to be their young guy that took over and kind of gave them some of that youth, their guy that they could kind of build on as like a young centerpiece. He just has not panned out up to this point since signing that extension. Really, over the course of this whole season, he just wasn't very good. He couldn't shoot, which is something they desperately needed him to kind of figure out. He wasn't great defensively, and so I don't think THT is the answer as like a young piece. I wouldn't be surprised if they try and move off of his contract to try and clear up a little more space. I'm guessing they're probably just going to go out and add more minimum level talent, because that's really all you can do when you have three guys making huge max contracts on your roster. One of the big things that people have talked about is trading Russell Westbrook. I think that's going to be really hard. I don't think it's going to be like impossible necessarily, because he is going to be expiring. So maybe there's a team out there with a bunch of cap space. A lot of people have said the Thunder, but I don't think it's something we would go for at this point with a lot of guards already on the roster, unless we were cool with buying them out. But there are a lot of teams out there with some cap space that maybe would be cool with taking on a Russell Westbrook to bring in like some extra draft picks. Not that the Lakers have very much. Maybe there's a team out there that likes Taylor Horton Tucker and wants to bring him in combination with Russ's contract, so they're willing to kind of take him as a sweetener to take on that contract and ultimately eat that money, buying him out, letting him go wherever. So there are avenues to getting Russ off the books, or maybe they could deal him to like a Houston Rockets for the John Wall deal, if that is still something that they're considering. But ultimately, I would not be shocked if Russ is still on this roster heading into next season. I think it's just going to be hard to move his contract, and ultimately, I think it probably makes more sense for the Lakers to try and just maybe figure this thing out rather than giving up assets that they already have a very low amount of that they could use to upgrade the roster in other ways to get off of his contract. I just don't think that that is going to make a lot of sense in the long term. I think getting a new coach, hoping they can stay healthy, and bringing in maybe some better shooters, some more 3-and-D players as opposed to guys that are kind of one or the other, could really help this team out. Another offseason of working with Russell Westbrook, maybe convincing him to continue to work on his jumper, focus more on being an off-ball threat, more cuts and stuff like that. Maybe there's a chance, and if they get healthy, who knows? Maybe they can try and make some kind of bounce back year. But ultimately, I don't think it makes a ton of sense. If you have to attach a bunch of assets to get off of Russ's contract, I think ultimately that's kind of moving a step backwards, because if Russ can figure this thing out, I think he can really help them out. But ultimately, it might just be a fact that the bridge is too burned at this point, with the Lakers fans not liking Russ talking about kind of the harassment he's received over the course of this season, the whole thing with Frank Vogel being told to bench him, which is very out in the public that the front office wanted Frank Vogel to bench Russell Westbrook, and he said no, he stuck by Russ, and ultimately Russ probably knows that the front office thought that about him. So honestly, the bridge might just be burned at this point, and they might both feel like it's better to move their separate ways, which it could be. But in my perspective, I just don't think they should be kind of rushing to give up a bunch of assets to get off of Russ's money. Maybe if they have another deal lined up where if they get off of Russ's money, they could bring in like a max player, then maybe something like that I think makes a lot more sense. But unless there's something lined up like that, I just don't think it makes a ton of sense. Of course, you still have LeBron James and Anthony Davis heading into next season. I don't think any of them are going anywhere. You could theoretically blow it up in this offseason, but when you have two guys of that caliber, there's no way the Lakers are going to blow things up unless one of them requests a trade. Then at that point, maybe, but in my opinion, I think that they're going to be right back in the thick of things next year in the Western Conference. I think they're going to make some decent moves. I don't think they're going to be a contender necessarily unless they do pull some kind of trickery and bring in like another star level player. They just have too many holes on this roster. The health of Anthony Davis and LeBron James at this point, a guy who's been like kind of an Iron Man for most of his career, his health is definitely deteriorating, even if his play isn't. He's had more long-term injuries these past few years than he's had like all of his career. So even though Father Time isn't stopping him from playing great basketball, it is stopping him from being on the court as much as he would like. And when you have teams like the Clippers that are going to be insane next season when Kawhi comes back, the Nuggets, the Suns, of course, I think are still going to be really good. You've got a lot of really good teams out there in the Western Conference. I just don't see a way that the Lakers make a return to championship contention next season, barring some really crazy, drastic moves. Maybe we'll see. Maybe Rob Pelinka has something up his sleeve, but the way that he's managed this roster in the past couple seasons, I really don't have a lot of optimism for him turning things around. So those are my thoughts on the Lakers. It is finally over. This is the last video I will make about them for a very long time, hopefully, unless they make some kind of trade. There's something like a player request out or something, or some big news drops like Frank Vogel getting fired. Maybe I'll make a video when they hire a new coach. Who knows? But for right now, this is the last time you'll hear me talk about the Lakers, and I'm sure you and I are both very happy about it, whether you're a Lakers fan or not. It's just been a weird season that's really dominated the news cycle, so now we can look forward to the playoffs and looking forward to teams outside of LA. So, I appreciate y'all watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Tell me what you thought about this Lakers season and ultimately what you would do in the offseason if you were the Lakers front office. I appreciate y'all watching. I will see you all later. Real one, say it back.